There's always something about planting crops, raising animals and befriending townsfolk that keeps drawing me back to the Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons games. Though to be honest, the latter seems to be holding my attention more so than the former. But that doesn't mean that I won't leave the Harvest Moon games in the dust. Enter Harvest Moon One World, the most recent in the Natsume Harvest Moon games and quite possibly the most ambitious yet. In Harvest Moon One World, you play as a self-insert farmer living with your mother and neighbour Doc Jr., the descendant of Doc from previous Harvest Moon games. A long time ago, the world flourished with people and nature working together, overseen by the harvest goddess who had made sure the land was rich with crops and produce. In this weird future world, the only type of food that you can seemingly find are potatoes, despite clearly being other edible items when you eat dinner later. You'd certainly be in trouble if a certain microorganism decided to strike, but I digress. As you and Doc Jr. go searching for food, you'll see a harvest wisp and decide to follow it to an old well. After feeding the well some nearby acorns, you'll get your first set of seeds to plant and, my god, it's a turnip seed! Praise the return of the turnip! After planting the seed, you investigate it later that night and encounter your first harvest sprite. This begins a chain of events where your farmer must explore the world to revive the harvest sprites in order to reawaken the harvest goddess. The game has you visiting 5 different settlements in different environments, 6 if you have the DLC, while meeting the locals, solving their settlements' problems and growing new crops while you're at it. You can also keep livestock and befriend the local wildlife to keep as pets, as well as becoming friendly with the locals by giving them gifts, doing quests for them, Doc Jr. politely threatening me when he asks, and perhaps even finding that special someone. Note that there are no same-sex marriages in this game. The game retains the 4 seasons, with each season having 28 days, but how does this game stack up against the recently released Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olivetown? And more importantly, is it any good? Find out in The Good. I think the game still has the basics of farming nailed down. You still till the fields, plant seeds, water them and then wait for them to grow before you harvest them. Only this time you initially need to find seeds by interacting with harvest wisps. If you're ever stuck having to remember where certain seeds are, there is a search function you can use which will highlight them on the map. Seeds are available on different days and different times, and you can unlock the seeds at a shop if you sell enough of the crop. Drop mutations, which I still think are one of Harvest Moon's neatest features, makes a return, and like Light of Hope, it does away with soil elevation in favour of where it's planted, the season, and whether it's been fertilised or not. Your farm has been made portable courtesy of Doc Jr., though having the portable version look like his ancestor's head is a little questionable, but you can pack up and set up your farm in different areas to make the most of the terrain, which is cool. There is a good variety of animals available, and there are a couple of different chicken, cow and sheep breeds that you can get with different produce being obtained from them. Breeding animals is also encouraged, as like in other Harvest Moon games and Story of Seasons games, animals can die of old age. You can also befriend the wildlife that you encounter in each area to keep as a pet, though I do have a little more to talk on about that later. Fertilizer can also be made from animal waste and really saves you from having to buy it if you have a bunch of animals you're taking care of. In terms of feed, just grow a lot of grass and they'll make plenty of animal feed. Your farming tools are considered special items and the appropriate tool will be used when you need it, thus freeing up valuable bag space for the crops, food and various materials you'll be getting through your adventures. You can also go mining, and there are 3 different areas you can mine at, 4 if you have the DLC, with each mine at a different depth and different rewards if you reach the bottom. Of course, the deeper you go, the larger the mine area is, but thankfully the game will bookmark every 11th floor. I do have some grievances about mining, but I'll also save that for later. In terms of basic features, Harvest Moon One World has gotten this down pat. I also really like the open world aspect of the game. It's very ambitious, and I think that idea was pulled off very well. The weather differs from region to region, so one area might be clear and sunny while others might be cloudy, raining or even stormy, which was a neat little touch. There are desert and snow areas, and if you wander around in those areas unprepared, you'll find that your stamina will start dropping quicker due to the heat or the cold. You can fix this by drinking a cold or warm drink, or eating a cold or warm meal, so stamina drain will go back to normal, but this is a temporary fix and you'll need to eat or drink again after a few hours. Once you solve the problem in a particular area and reawaken the harvest sprite of the area, you can fast travel between them. You can also set up your farm nearby in an area that you're working on to make things easier when you're working on the main story, as you can fast travel to where your farm is. This is especially handy with the DLC area as it's on an island. Nonetheless, this is probably the best thing about this game, and I wouldn't be opposed to seeing an approach like this in future games. I do like the cast of characters in One World, and dare I say it, I think I might actually like them more than Pioneers of Olivetown in its current state at the time of this review. I do plan on revisiting again once it gets its patches and I explore all of its DLC. You do have generic characters with no names, but the characters that make up the main story all have some personality to them, and the main bachelors and bachelorettes have their own personal problems to overcome outside of the main story. While character development and overcoming problems is also present in Pioneers of Olivetown, I feel OneWorld addresses and handles these better. While I'm not the biggest fan of 3D models and favour cut-ins, at least the emotions of the characters are more varied, and I do appreciate that. But of course, with the things I liked, there were things I didn't like, and we're going to explore those in the bad. The first issue I had with this game was before I even started playing it. While you can unlock and upgrade your tools in the game, I do not appreciate the final upgrades being locked behind DLC. It certainly made getting to the bottom of the mines easier, and I've just ironically added to the problem by buying it, but I just don't approve of locking tool upgrades behind DLC. And I wanted to see how much of a difference it made, since the hammer was the most used item for me in the game for all the time I spent mining to buy the largest house upgrade. While the mines is its own problems, which I'll address shortly, the final upgraded hammer certainly makes a bit of a difference. I just feel in regard to DLC, there's certainly more meaningful things you can put in for the value, and I'm hoping that this doesn't become a trend in future. The mines are the only areas where I've come across bugs in the game. There are times where the screen goes black and resets the floor and any progress I've made on it, and there are times where the game will just outright crash. In later mines you can also come across traps which will make you drop floors in return for stamina damage. While the amount of floors you can drop seem to range between 1 to 5, I found about 95% of the floor traps I've intentionally triggered to try and get to the next 11th floor has only dropped me 1 floor and penalised my stamina. While I'm acting quite nitpicky here, when you get to the later floors of the 100th floor mine, you'll find that even with the DLC upgraded hammer, a lot of the rocks will take more than one hit to break, and with the very large floor size, you'll be wasting a lot of time even trying to uncover the next ladder to the next floor, or a floor trap. On the plus side, you can make a fair amount of money from selling the minerals, though you'll find that buying several recipes to expand what you can cook will start adding up, and will eventually cost more than a new house. What a messed up economy you live in. Now, I mentioned earlier I had more to talk about with pets. Well, other than keeping them in your house if it's a smaller animal, or a barn if it's a bigger animal, what purpose do they really serve other than a cosmetic addition? I feel that if you're going to advertise a bunch of animals, especially in your DLC, then it'd be neat if some of them would do more things. While there's the obvious rideable animals, it would be neat if some of the other animals would forage for food or things for you to cook or sell. Larger animals take up a spot in the barn that's better used for another cow, sheep, goat or rideable animal, even if you decide to invest in a bigger barn. The flow of time has once again become a problem. While I was glad that Harvest Moon Light of Hope fixed this issue, I was a little annoyed that this has come back. With preparing for the few festivals which you can unlock after completing each area, a lot of them require you to talk to somebody before 10 AM. If you're like me and you tend to your crops as well as feed and care for your animals first thing in the morning, you'll find it hard pressed to get this all done before 10 AM when you need to tell the respective person that you're entering the contest. Time doesn't stop when you're in a house or your barn, which is fair because it doesn't in real life, so you really need to manage your time well in this game, and an average day in the game normally takes me about 10 minutes, sometimes less, and very rarely near the 20-minute mark. While we're on the topic of festivals, the cooking contest. The rules state to produce 3 items to be judged on, yet the game continues after I submit one item and I still find myself winning. Also, the people you talk to don't seem to acknowledge you winning, and they seem to repeat their lines for you before you enter the contest. Other than that, I think I've covered what I didn't like, so I think it's time I give the opinion. Harvest Moon OneWorld is certainly an improvement over its predecessor, and with the pre-patch state of Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olivetown at the time of this review, I would say that this game is catching up. It already has the basics nailed, and the open world aspect is easily the best part of this game, but it's held back by its DLC content outside of the new area, which introduces a new bachelor and bachelorette, issues in the mines, and the flow of time. Whether you enjoy Story of Seasons and other farming games like Stardew Valley and World's Dawn, I think Harvest Moon OneWorld is a competent entry and the best on the Natsume side since the split. And admittedly, while I was put off on the DLC idea initially, I still thought it was worth a chance to see how this game had changed since Light of Hope. It's certainly moving in the right direction, but it still has a ways to go. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give Harvest Moon OneWorld a small turnip out of 10. It's nice to finally see turnips in this game now. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.